All right, hi everyone. We're here with Amy Salomone.
Hello.
Is that how you pronounce it? Sorry if I
Salomone, it's
wrong.
fine. It's Italian.
Right. And she did all the artwork for my new album, One World. And so we're here to talk about the process and all the themes and ideas and concepts behind all the art. So she did an artwork for every song plus the whole album. So there's quite a lot to dig into.
Yeah, it was a
So
very exciting and fun project to work on. So thank you so much for including me in it. I'm really excited.
should we start by how it initially started
Sure.
and what's the whole like backstory?
Most of my art is honestly science anatomically based, but a lot of it's just science conceptually based because that's my background. So I was always a collage artist, but I became a digital artist fairly recently. So like 2020 is when I really learned to use digital media. And so essentially all the pieces I make are typically my way of communicating some concept in science.
Mm.
Whether it be natural selection and evolution, cosmology, biology. Biology is really my background. So my background's in cellular and molecular biology. So yeah.
Cool.
And a lot of the themes of that you would come to me with in this album were so related to what
Mm.
I typically the themes that I'm like really interested in. So it was really exciting to work on this project and kind of see it through with you.
Yeah, there was something about your art with the like the biology and nature and like all this kind of like very old, almost like from the 1700s, like art from
Yeah.
the art books or like naturalist types of
Yeah.
like from that era. And but also you have some kind of like also like spiritual elements and to kind of like make it even deeper and like thought provoking. And so I maybe I was drawn to your work because this new album kind of like mirrors that thematic
Yeah.
also
Completely.
with the kind of like uh, we're all living here in the on planet Earth, like all like sentient beings, like animals
Yeah.
and organisms, and how we experience the world, and kind of like the awe and wonder, or the like.
Yeah. I think both of our art is essentially talking about the same concepts, right? So that idea of like being a part of the natural world, but also feeling separated from the natural world and trying to understand our own lives through that viewpoint is where a lot of my collages come from, and it feels like a lot of the songs in this album come from. So
So should we talk
yeah.
about the first song, "Harboring Souls," because that's kind
Yes,
of
I
like
have it right here.
a representation of the whole album, I think. And
Yeah, I loved this piece. This was honestly, out of all of them, probably my favorite piece that I had made. And I just loved, when you would come to me, you talked about that idea of pain and suffering of humans, like that separation from nature.
mm,
So like finding ourselves looking at the natural world from a distance. And so, you talked about like the story of humanity and sentient life forms who inhabit the planet. And I wanted to convey that idea of like awe and wonder, but also kind of the pain and suffering of human beings in a modern world and what that feels like to feel so disconnected from something that we're so intrinsically connected to. So in this piece, you kind of see, the brain inside of the glass enclosure with like the modern city behind it, but that it's surrounded by nature, and we're just always kind of trying to break through that glass.
mm,
Or we feel such a kinship with the natural world, but it's like we just feel like we can't get there. It's so
mm.
difficult for someone to even be able to take a walk in the woods. So yeah, I this piece was really visually, I was very, very pleased with it and how it
Yeah,
aligned with the song.
yeah, me too. Absolutely love that
Yeah,
artwork. It was one of my favorites as well.
yeah.
There were many really good ones, but that one really spoke to me. And you also incorporated the elements from the music video really nicely
Yeah.
with the chameleon and
Yes.
all the other things with the city, kind of like the city being inside the glass dome with the
Yep.
brains, and then outside of that is kind of like the nature. where we belong, but seem like separated from it. Yeah, it was really cool. Also, I noticed that in the album art, the glass dome is broken, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of like broken free now. Like
Yeah.
when the whole thing is like said and done, it kind of like symbolizes, for me at least, like now the like glass dome has been broken and we are like free to join
Right. I
nature.
think so a big reason why I make the pieces that I make is I was a science teacher for almost 20 years. So it's trying to change perspectives of how we see ourselves and really breaking open that dome of like, like I said, we think of ourselves as so separate from the rest of life, but we're not, obviously. And if we could look at ourselves from like a larger vantage point, a lot of our human experiences would make so much more sense to us. And it's kind of like a comforting idea, that if we're capable of seeing ourselves as part of this natural system, it's almost its own form of spirituality.
Mm.
And so, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I wake up to the idea that I'm an animal myself.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm looking at myself. I'm like, holy shit! Like I am an animal.
Right. Of
This is like
course.
what it feels like to be an animal. Sometimes we
Yeah.
forget that we are like also animals
I
and
know my biggest pet peeve in movies or TV shows is when they say like, well, I'm not an animal or we're not animals. I'm like,
mm.
no, we are.
We're mammals. Yeah.
I hate that so much from a biology perspective. I'm like, that's completely untrue.
Mm.
But even just when you think about we think about ourselves as these beings that are independent, but we're so not independent. Like we're covered with trillions of microbes that like we are 100% dependent on. And
Mm.
we cannot live our lives without them. So like, even just the idea of human beings as a superorganism, is, we think we're separate from nature, but we are in no way separate from nature. And in my opinion, we're not even the dominant species on the planet. Bacteria are. So
Mm.
we're in their world. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. All
So
right. So which one do you want to talk about next?
let's go to
Twisted.
Twisted.
Twisted was really fun making for me because of the video that I had seen and that
Mm.
idea. You would talk to me about the inner struggles of the psyche and exploring the dark corners of the mind. And that also that kind of war right now with AI and how it's and technology and how it's affecting our lives. And so I made this in an airport.
Mm.
And the entire time I was working on it, I don't think I finished it in the airport, but the entire time I was working on it, I was like, is someone going to be looking over my shoulder? Like, what are you doing right now? But I used as a backdrop the piece, The Scream. And so because obviously that piece is just this ball of frustration. And this was just a really fun piece for me to make. I really enjoyed doing it. And like I create playing around with distortions and images, and that kind of distortion of reality and bending of reality.
After the Harboring Souls, which is kind of like an overture or like a miniature version of
Yeah.
the album, and then with the Twisted, it kind of like starts from the beginning, like from the disconnection, and
Yeah.
we are because we are so absorbed with technology, and it
Right.
makes us, which is very weird for an like animal to do. Like
Yeah.
no other animal does that, and kind of like teleports into another dimension and
Right.
forgets the where you actually are, like in the actual world, because we are so good with the imagination and thinking about like putting yourself like in your thoughts, which is sound like not here. It's not like
Yeah.
in the some
Disconnected.
other dimension. So
Yep.
when we're using that technology, it almost like transports our attention and like consciousness to this like digital world.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because, I think that technology kind of hijacks a lot of our biological impulses. And so we get trapped in this technological world and we see it as real life. It becomes a part of our real lives, but like it's always that question, like, is it real life? Are we, is technology stealing our lives away,
Mm.
essentially? Which is, I like that the imagery of like the digital kind of formatting behind the code essentially behind like the clown skeleton, you
Mm,
know? I really liked that imagery for that reason. This like you're saying that idea of like entertainment, but also for me, this, you know, whittling away of our time. You know,
mm,
are we spending and doing the right things if we're constantly in our own technology?
mm,
Yeah. I think people are on a lot of like very different spectrum, you know, in how they think about technology. I'm more of like, I think maybe it's because I grew up before technology was really like an integral part of our lives. I mean, obviously some technology was, but you know, I've seen how it's taken over daily interactions of how people communicate with each other in sometimes positive ways and sometimes negative ways.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's positive aspects to technology as well, because otherwise we wouldn't even be talking here,
Right.
and I
Yeah,
wouldn't
exactly.
be
Yeah, we never
like
would have
make
met each
music
other, you know.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just like so enticing and
Yeah.
so captivating that it can have like mind fragmenting like aspects to it when
Yeah.
you're like, even if you think about the like scrolling a feed, it's like, even if it's not negative, it's still like every post is such different. Like here is a
Yeah.
like cat jumping here, and then now it's like someone parachuting, jumping, and here is another like political subject, and here is like a sports event, and you know,
Yeah.
it goes like from like 180, like all over the place, and you're
Right.
just kind of like, oh, new situation, oh, new, like, oh, new,
Yeah, it's so
so it's,
interesting. It's such an interesting
there's no
juxtaposition.
continuity.
Yeah, no continuity, but also just when you're talking like that, the sitting at your phone and just kind of scrolling through and not, it's seeming to me like you're not really living your life, but at the same time, you're seeing people all over the world that are sharing information that you would
Mm.
never have had an insight into other people's lives the way that you can now. Yeah.
And how do you feel about the clown theme?
Oh,
What
I
does that,
mean,
represent?
well, so it's interesting. So first of all, I kind of got this from watching the video.
Mm,
But that idea of, you know, and the entertainment value, you know, like obviously clowns in a circus, but also clowns kind of have a dark connotation because a lot of people are afraid of them. So they do, you know, most people, a clown is like a not, you know, most people, but some people, a clown is like a happy fixture, but then a skeleton in a clown uniform is like the complete opposite of that. So it just
mm,
kind of changes your complete perception of um, that costume.
mm,
So I like I said, like, and then the clown with the, you know, shushing you. I had found these because obviously I work with collage and I had found these images of all these different clown illustrations from like, I don't know, I think it was the 1800s. I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. I think I found it at like right when I was making this piece. I'm like so excited about using it in this piece.
mm. For me also, the clown is kind of like we are putting this, when we're on social media, we're putting on this kind of like mask,
Oh,
like drawing on your, like putting on a mask to
yeah.
like seem more funny or
Yeah.
someone else. But also I had this kind of like connotation with the kind of like the world, like the geopolitics situation of
Yeah.
like this age of like the big powers, big
Right.
power politics, and how insane it is to like drop bombs on each other when we are like, if you think about the like world, and we are here and we don't know if there are others,
Yeah.
so how fragile it is to just not um, hold it as like sacred thing, but instead dropping bombs on us and on ourselves, and like,
And constantly in power struggles between countries and
yeah, so it's that's also kind of like the like the world goes round and round like clowns in the circus. That's kind of like what I was
oh yeah.
also
I-
thinking about, and we are just distracted in the phones and like all in all these like narrative bubbles.
have you ever heard of Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan?
I
I
heard
don't
the
know where
quote,
he's
but
Yeah, it's a quote. And they had taken a picture, Voyager 1, I believe, had taken a picture of Earth
mm,
from like I think they were at Jupiter when, you know, Voyager was at Jupiter when it took the picture, but basically it looks like a little dot, right?
mm,
And he talks about what you were just talking about, you know, that all of our self-importance, all of our wars, all of our great leaders, all of the whole of human history exists in this like mo dot in this mote of dust, you know, suspended in Or she said suspended in dust. I can't quote it entirely or accurately, but yeah, it's just like, we have such this idea of self-importance, and in reality, we really need each other to survive on this planet. Like we should be working together always and not constantly having these battles between, you know, perceived others. It's
Mm.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So should we move to the
sure.
piece?
Yeah.
So I really love the artwork in
Thank you.
the chi piece, and it's so badass with
Thank you. I love this piece too.
the
This is
dragon,
another.
with the cherry blossom in
Yeah.
in the place of fire. So
Yeah, you had talked about with this the idea of activating dragon energy and giving us like resilience and motivation to kind of push forward and become creators of our destiny. So I didn't, wanted to feel like destruction. I wanted it to feel
mm,
like new possibilities, new life. And so that's why I kind of worked with that idea of the dragon breathing new life, breathing seed dispersal, because everything
mm.
that I make comes down to science.
It also takes strength to like show love or like be loving,
Yeah.
so that it's almost like an aggressive shift or
Yeah.
something, towards a more loving posture in the world, instead of all this hatred and all of that. But it also takes
Yeah.
like courage to like overcome all of that and choose love instead, you know?
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of represent some of what you were just saying. So that's why you've got like the waves on the bottom, and the dragon above that, kind of like rising above that oppression, essentially,
Mm,
and be able to create new life. And sometimes I'll make collages and they take forever, and I go through like five versions that you never see. And sometimes I make a piece that just works right away. And this is one of those pieces where like I knew right away, like exactly where I wanted to go with it when I was making it.
mm. Yeah, it's the same with me. Like some tracks just kind of like happen,
Yeah.
and this was actually one of those tracks that was
Oh,
really
that's
easy.
great that there's that
Sometimes,
that
but
commonality between.
sometimes it requires a lot of thinking and figuring out, but sometimes it just flows.
Do you want to talk about medicine?
Yeah, let's go to medicine.
Yeah, okay, great. This was so I used imagery from I'm gonna butcher this man's name because it's French and French accents are not my jam, but Boucherie, he was an anatomist in I believe the 1700s, and his illustrations are just haunting and amazing. He's probably the number one anatomist that I use in all of my pieces. And this image I have been wanting to use for so long, and it was so appropriate for this piece, and you had talked about that this song was about addictions, bad habits, like self-inflicted pain, and then about like finding the antidote to the disconnection, and looking forward in the wrong places. So like going down this rabbit hole of addiction, essentially, trying
Mm,
to find connection. And I just like loved using imagery of medicine. I'm going to say medicine because it's not really healing. It's really, you know, patching, and, covering symptoms,
mm,
and using that idea of medicine, in order to create this image of like desperation and addiction.
mm. Yeah, that's interesting that you said that, like covering the just covering the symptoms, because I feel like also a big part of medicine, um, is that,
Yeah.
like the Western medicine, which is great, in many ways, but also like focuses on lot of kind of like just delivering the results, which
Yeah.
which is like just
Without
getting rid
dealing
of
with
the
the problem.
symptoms, but then
Yeah.
you end up like dependent on it to keep the symptoms away, but it doesn't address the root cause.
Right.
Kind of like
Exactly. Yeah.
maybe the root cause is actually living in the modern world, and
Yeah. It often
and
is.
because if you go camping and you're just living outside, and sometimes I think about just the way we live inside, how much
Yeah.
it's like even that is like already quite
Unnatural.
quite different from what we evolved. Like
Right.
billions and billions of years we have lived outside in the
Yeah.
like where you can feel the wind and the air and temperature changes and the sun and all the
Yeah, our
smells and
circadian
everything.
rhythm and all of our
And
hormonal rhythms are in tune with something that we're disconnecting ourselves
yeah,
purposefully from.
and that could lead to variety of different symptoms when we're getting disconnected from that. And then, you know, we're inventing all these medications to
Yeah.
to take away those symptoms.
Right.
And,
It's like, yeah, just like you're saying, it's like it kind of is to me is this like nefarious feeling of like, our societies are built on separating us from natural systems, feeding us processed food, making us work all hours of the night, this and that and the other thing. And then we are a biological being that is far removed from our instincts, as you said, and our natural rhythms. And then we get sick and the answer is here's a pill. Let's just cover up the symptom, but like you said, not the reason why you're sick in the first place.
mm,
Which for a lot, and to me, this has a lot to do with interests and money and, et cetera. Like I see a big change in healthcare in where I live in the United States, where people are starting to think about or be enlightened to this idea of like really what's been taken from them when it comes to health and healthcare and what that means. And
mm,
so, I thought that this was an interesting image because you've got that imagery from, I have it on the side of my screen so I could look at it while we're talking. You've got that imagery of the sawing away of the face.
mm,
So kind of like this is from an old surgical manual. So, or he illustrated surgeries. And so like that, something that we look at now, we'd be like, oh my God, that's insane. That's terrible. Right. And then you see on the bottom more like modern answers to medical issues. So that's why you've got all of the pills kind of flowing out of him. And,
mm,
I wonder in 100 years, in 200 years, in 300 years, what we're going to think of what we're doing right now.
mm,
So, as our understanding of health and the human body evolves.
mm. Yeah, like in the past there were so many kind of like medical practices that we now think about like, oh, that was pretty
So
crazy that we
crazy.
did that. Or
Yeah.
like asbestos or some
Yeah.
other chemicals that we used to use, and then we figured out like, oh, maybe that wasn't like the best thing to do. Like
Right. Like
sometimes I wonder
mercury
like
and
how many
lead
of
and
those
yeah.
we're doing right now that we're gonna
Right.
think about in
We have
100
no
years like,
idea.
oh, that was pretty crazy that we just did that.
Right, yeah, I know. I mean, and there's such a explosion of like metabolic issues and
Mm,
that all is and and also behavioral issues, and that all, not all of it, but a lot of it is deeply aligned with obviously what we're putting in our body, our microbiome, like our guts, our
mm,
bacteria and our behavior are significantly aligned to one another. Like most of the serotonin in our bodies is made in our gastrointestinal tract.
mm,
So, it's just really interesting. And I love like this piece was just, I have my issues with the medical system that I had been going through, especially last year. And so this piece was like a really nice like piece of like almost stress relief making
mm.
it. Yeah.
Also, there's the other aspect of the medicine, which is the self-medicating with the kind of like dopamine inducing activities,
Yes.
which is uh, like kind of like the self-inflicted pain aspect of the
Yeah.
song, which is and which is like the whole dopamine chase kind of thing,
Right.
where maybe we don't get enough dopamine because we're not waking waking up outside every day when the
Yeah.
sun comes up or something, and we're just kind of like a little disconnected, and and um, and so we're lacking the baseline dopamine that we should be having. And then but then we have all these activities or foods that we eat or drugs that we take
Yeah.
or any kind of
Or
like
gambling,
anything.
I think of like a casino and people sitting
Mm,
there like pressing buttons
activities,
and
yeah.
like no sunlight and just all of these bright, colorful lights and
Mm,
sounds meant to like trigger dopamine releases,
mm,
And it's just like, yeah, well, like I said, like I always call human beings biological machines. That's what we are, And yeah, we're kind of robbing ourselves, but then giving back in very unnatural and unhealthy ways.
mm. and then that becomes a addiction, a
Yeah.
dependency, because
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
when you stop doing it, your dopamine goes way down,
Right.
and then
Right.
you feel like shit, and then you have to do it again, uh,
Yep.
and then that's like the loop, and the loop just like keeps on going. So what about Round the Rock?
Yeah,
Let's
Round
talk
the
about
Rock was
Round the Rock.
it was nice to have a lighter message with this one. So, you wanted a piece about traveling the world, seeing new places, meeting people, and kind of seeing the commonalities between human beings, because essentially it doesn't matter where we are from in this earth, we're all essentially the same. For the reasons that we just talked about, like biologically, we all evolved the same way. And so our concerns, our decisions are not that different from one another, even though our cultures can be incredibly different from one another.
Mm,
Um, yeah. It's almost like, the more that you travel, obviously, the more you see those commonalities, and the less you otherize other people. But it's like you were talking of before, like this idea of like a global connection. If only the actual people of government, not governments, I mean the actual people in countries could communicate with each other more readily, we would just see our similarities rather than our differences. I feel like there's a lot of like propaganda about what people in other parts of the world are like.
mm,
And those walls are always taken down when you actually can meet people
mm.
and speak to them.
I think that's one positive aspect of the internet, because that it
Yeah,
allows you to see people from all over the world, and connect with people from all over the world. Like you and me right now, we're on different
right.
parts of the globe, like
Yeah,
7 hour time difference, and but still we're kind of like in the same space having a conversation.
yeah,
And so yeah, that's definitely something positive that came out of the digital.
absolutely.
So the Round the Rock is kind of like a chill track that
Enlightenment.
it's kind of like in between, and it's almost like a little intermission or
Yeah.
something for me, because for me it also represents the not having to always like arrive to the destination, but instead like just enjoy the journey, and
Yeah,
just be, and not really like think about the past or the future,
right.
but just stay present, and just kind of like living our lives in the with the positivity and curiosity,
Yeah.
and because that's where the inspiration comes, when you just kind of like let your mind like wander freely, and just encountering the world and new things,
Hmm.
uh,
Into who
and
you
then you
are and
can
how you
channel
live your
that
life
into.
and how you see. Yeah. I haven't been able to travel for a few years, for 2 years, but I really like to travel internationally. And so this was a really, because of what you just said, that idea of just being able to kind of like break out and just alter the way that you are looking at others and the world. And, it changes you as a person.
Mm,
Um, yeah. So this, like I said, this was a super fun piece, very like light and airy and yeah.
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 And so then after Round the Rock um, comes We Are the Moon,
Yeah.
the moon piece.
Yeah, We Are the Moon was the first piece that I made. And it was the first piece that I made because thematically it was the closest to what I normally make pieces about. And so, you had talked about, I think you would mention, did you mention Carl Sagan or did I mention Carl Sagan when we were talking about this? I think,
I mentioned Carl Sagan, and then you said that you're a big
okay.
fan, so it worked out
Oh,
well.
such a big fan. So yeah, so that idea of all of the things he talked about, but us being made of stardust, like I have a series called Atomic Shuffle. And it's all about how atoms are constantly moving. So they're created, in stars and supernova, and then they are dispersed and they come together, based on chemical. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. They come together molecularly, and that they're always just kind of shuffling in and out, of biotic and abiotic, so like living and non-living things. And even throughout our lives, like the atoms in our bodies are constantly moving. We don't see that movement, but it's happening. And then when we're gone, the atoms in our body are getting once again, recycled and repurposed and becoming new life or new objects in this universe. So this was a really fun piece for me to make. And it was, like I said, it's the first piece we worked on together.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So like I wrote here, we are, because I took some notes, like we are the universe. I think this is from the song. We are the stars, we are the moon, or you don't exactly say that, but it's kind of like
Mm.
that theme. And we've been here from the start. So I think of that as like atomically, we've been here from the start,
Yeah, exactly.
or
Yeah.
at least hydrogen and helium, if you're thinking about the Big Bang, have been here from the start, but they are the seed for everything else.
Mm.
So yeah, this was a fun. So in this piece, I've got all of the representations that I typically, would use in one of the atomic shuffle pieces. So that nebula in the background, that idea of like new stars, new life, new generation, the light behind the being, and then all of the decomposition and reshuffling of atoms, with like the mushrooms, the decomposers, and then the new life, like the flowers coming up.
Mm.
Yeah, and then obviously the moons as well. This was like it was fun to work on the first one with you. You make
Mm.
very direct edits, and I really appreciate that. It was really when we were
Mm.
making this, you were like, "Can you please move the moon a little bit out?" And I'm like, "This
Mm.
is so nice,
Mm.
like to work with someone who's so specific." Because sometimes, and it's always nice to work with anyone, but sometimes people can really be really vague, and it's really hard for me to know what they want
Mm.
me to do. You were very like easy to work with all this entire process, but this, like I
Mm.
said, this is our first piece together.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm an artist as well, so I kind of like I
Right?
know what I want.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. It was it
I
was
hate it when
great.
people give you advice like, "Oh, could you make it just like 10% more better?"
Yeah,
Something like
yeah.
that,
Or they'll
you
be like,
know.
I just am looking for like this feeling, And
Mm.
I'm like, well, I don't even know what that like my husband and I were just having a conversation because we were watching a show and he's like, this show's cozy. And it to me, it's the least cozy show in the world. So
Mm.
I'm like, I had to stop and be like, what's your definition of cozy?
Breaking
Like, what
Bad.
does that even mean? Yeah. So when someone's like, can you make it more like whimsy? It's like, oh, I don't know what that means to
Mm.
you. So sorry. So I need more advice. This is Pepper, by the way. This is our new
Oh, hello. Sentient life form.
our new noisemaker. So I apologize.
And I really love the person in the middle. Like you have the moon and
Yeah.
the pillars of creation in the background,
Yeah.
which is kind of
Yep.
like another aspect of the song, which talks about the uh, that even though we are just atoms and we are the energy and all of that, but it still matters like what we do and what we think. It
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
like even if we don't have free will, it still matters what you think or what you like want to do. It's not like, oh, if you realize that free will doesn't exist, then you might just as well do nothing because everything is just gonna like unfold whatever however it
Yeah.
will. And but it's like an operating system. Like if you have that notion in your head that I can't because I don't have free will, that it means that I don't have agency. But that's
Right.
wrong because you just have agency and it matters what you decide to do. So that's like an aspect of the which might feel like contradictory a little
Yeah.
bit because we're just part of the universe and it's unfolding and all of that, but it still matters the like what we do and that's why there's the line which keeps repeating in the end, which goes like plant the seed, it will grow. You only reap what you sow,
Yeah.
which is nice. Um, with the image you made, you have the flowers growing
Right.
and the vegetation like growing. So those are like the good seeds that we're planting, and then we can watch it grow. So
Yeah,
yeah.
two things. One for me is like these kind of atomic shuffle pieces, or this piece in particular, these are very, you could really take this, like I said before, as like a different form of spirituality. This
Mm.
idea of like we don't know why we exist, we don't know. We don't know why the atoms of the universe have come together to form all different kinds of life on this planet. Like we're not aware of why. But it's such an amazing thing to think about, this amazing opportunity that we have to kind of like be here and observe and be human beings. So even if we don't have, let's say, free will, I feel like that when I say we don't have free will, I don't mean like we're automatons and like we don't have any say, like you were just saying. It's more like we have the ability to like make a decision and then think about like all of the reasons for why we made that decision that have so much more to do with our own like life narrative. And I just think that's so amazing to walk through life and be like, why did I act like that? Like, what's hormonally going on? Why do those hormones exist? When did they evolve? Like what, like even I made a piece a while ago called Why We Love, and it is, or the evolution of love, and it's about oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is a hormone that's a love hormone, basically. Like it's produced with, bonding when people hug each other, mother, child. And then I looked at like in that piece, I explored all of the ways that oxytocin is used in other organisms. A lot of marine organisms use it for different things that have nothing to do with bonding and love. And it's just so interesting to me, like to be able to look at the world from like that why. It's like, a child asking why about everything. That's really what science is, right? So just
Mm.
wanting to understand the why of what we do, what we think. Do you want to go to good karma?
Um, yeah, yeah, that's good. That's next.
Okay, cool.
Karma.
Um, yeah. So you had said for me, this was about putting in motion a virtuous cycle and elevating everyone when we help each other. And you had said the lyrics were light up the candle and banish the darkness.
Hmm.
So I wanted to create like a piece that felt like the song felt to me. And that idea of like control and calm, being in the center, like you creating your calm and then the swirling of like chaos and water around
Mm.
you, and kind of a control of the elements with your mind. This idea of enlightening, and lifting ourselves to a higher sense of being was what I was trying to communicate with this piece.
Mm.
So yeah, and this is honestly not normally imagery that I use, so it was really interesting, kind of like stepping out of my comfort zone for me.
Mm. Yeah, I felt like it mirrored the sound of the song also very nicely with the kind of like with the
Yeah,
waves and the like rugged kind of like like you said like the chaotic like nature of the waves. It kind of like
yeah,
for me it like looked the same way as the like beat sounds, which is kind of like a little bit rough around the edges or like
yeah,
energetic. So I thought it was
yeah,
really nice.
completely. Yeah, that like then the rhythm, and yeah, I really liked it. And I listened to all the music again before we met up today,
Mm.
because it has been a while since I listened to some of the songs because we worked together last June, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice to kind of see this piece along with the song, and it really works well with it. So
Mm.
yeah,
It's nice how the themes of the album kind of like keep evolving
yeah,
with the imagery as well. Like the previous piece had the moons in it, and then the
yep,
next one has the sun in it. So
yeah,
I thought that was really cool too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is, and I like the idea of like the illumination of the candle. And yeah, it was a really fun piece to make. I
Mm.
definitely enjoyed it.
I have the song "Bad Karma,"
Yeah,
so this was like almost like other side of the coin
yeah,
for me.
yeah.
So "Bad Karma" was like talking about money and don't be proud of your money. And
Okay.
yeah, the good karma piece um, for me, it's like like you said, like putting forth that um, positive, like virtuous cycle of positivity,
Yeah.
and I feel like the you have the character like the meditative person in the middle of the piece with the candle. So I felt like that was really symbolized the whole message of the song.
Yeah, and what you were talking about with the bad karma of the idea of like money as being a motivator and good karma as this, it's for me like good karma is like controlling of your brain. and that your brain can create this. You have the power to create this positive reality for
Mm,
yourself. And your brain has like incredible power to significantly affect everything physiologically about you.
mm,
Um, and so, this piece is about that, like that meditative state. And if you practice that meditative state, like the positive that can come from that, so it's like the inward out as opposed to the outward in.
mm.
Yeah.
And it's like a continuation to the We Are the Moon piece,
Yeah.
where it's talking about the like setting in motion, like planting those seeds. So then good karma is kind of like doubling down on
Yeah.
that notion and actually like doing it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an expansion of We Are the Moon, right? So, like,
Mm,
you've got like the beginning of growth and then just kind of like the expansion of that.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
do you want to talk about Corazon?
yeah.
I love this piece and this song. So you would wanted a piece that was about listening to your heart. And one of the lines was, "There is a million," if I get it wrong, I'm sorry. There's a million reasons, a million tears, but wipe them all away and just feel your heartbeat. So this piece for me, I wanted it to feel like that. I wanted the emphasis to be on the heart and the kind of almost, I can't make the heartbeat in a still image, but that beating of the heart and that emphasis on it. So you've got like a very dark, somber background. The beginning of this song has a somber feel to it as well, I thought.
Hmm.
And then I wanted to basically have it feel like a rainy day in a dark forest, but that this is like the main, just the highlighted nature of the heart represented, like listening to your heart and quieting other distraction that's surrounding it. So I wanted it to feel quiet and yeah, but it was a really fun. This is one of my favorite illustrations by that same French anatomist,
Mm.
the heart one. And so I was very excited to use it in this piece. I don't use it very often.
Yeah, I love the anatomical heart in
Yeah.
there.
Well, this one
Like,
has it like covered with membrane, and so it's not, and I also like that as well, right? Because it's that idea of like the heart is protected in this piece,
mm,
as opposed to just being exposed, and
mm.
more like literally what we think of when we think of the heart.
And the heart is blooming, which
Yeah.
is very important
Yeah.
in the theme. And actually in the lyrics of the G, the sample, it goes the waiting for the heart to bloom. They're
Yeah.
they're singing about the like waiting for love and waiting for the heart to bloom. So I think it was like really cool that then like towards the more like in the end of the album, there's like this piece where now the heart is actually blooming. So I
Yeah.
thought that was
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah. It's that telling of that full story with the
Hmm.
album. So yeah, absolutely.
And also this sample in this Corazon piece,
Hmm.
it's like a seed planting song. So that was also nice
Yeah.
because it goes back to the We Are the Moon, where the line is talking about like plant the seed, it will grow.
Yep.
And then in Corazon, there's a sample about the seed planting, like a seed planting song, and now the heart is blooming, like
And I also wanted it to feel like it was blooming and also like it was an organic matter in this forest. Like it was also growing, from
mm.
the tree essentially. So yeah.
And you have the birds flying around the heart
Yes.
with the aura or the halo.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked the dark contrast of the birds to the heart. It felt a little ominous, but like in a good way.
Mm.
Yeah. So I really like the use of that imagery with this like bright light heart.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So.
And I feel like this the halos with the birds symbolize kind of like the sacredness of nature
Oh
and
yeah,
animals.
absolutely. Yeah, you see
Yeah.
them in a lot of like religious halos in a lot of religious paintings, and that's honestly why I use them because a lot of
Mm.
like my aesthetic appeal is from like Renaissance work.
Mm.
It's kind of like my favorite genre of art. All right, so do we want to talk about I See You?
Yeah, let's talk about ICU.
Okay. What you want to start talking first about the song, maybe?
Yeah, this song is kind of like heavy hitting, like a banger, but but it also has this emotional aspect to it, which is quite typical in my music.
Yeah.
Uh, so for me, that was kind of like a radical call for loving kindness,
Yeah. And
and
empathy.
empathy, and like feeling, kind of like it has that, like the bass lines and all of that has like that kind of like screeching, sound. So that's, for me, that kind of like symbolizes the like feeling of the suffering of others.
Hmm.
And then in there are like parts of the song where it shifts into like more emotional melodic aspects, and then goes back to the suffering. And in
Yeah.
the end there's like this climax where the like emotions like reach a peak. So yeah, that was basically the idea of the song. And also like this vocal I see you, kind of like almost like a haunting or like an echoing call for empathy.
Yeah, I like that idea of haunting. For this piece, I used a kind of different technique for me, but I used imagery from Katja Kollwitz, who is a German artist. She's my favorite artist. You can see the two people in the, on the in the field that are hugging, or one of the. It's supposed to be like someone who's holding like a dead child, I believe, is
Mm,
the original drawing that she made. And so, yeah, playing around with this idea of obviously empathy, um, the idea of seeing the sadness of others and, relating and empathizing with them. And then the colors to me represented the idea of lifting someone up. So the birds in general, but also the lightness of the yellows, the spectrum of yellows. But yeah, so I have probably less to say about this piece, but I really liked how it fit with the feeling of the song. And just that kind of like idea of loving kindness in the presence of other suffering and just
mm.
being there and trying to feel what they feel. I think
Yeah,
it's our
like,
strongest attribute as human beings is our ability to empathize with one another and to be there for one another. It's our most virtuous characteristic.
mm. And also there's like this meditative or meditation like aspect to the album, where many of the songs are kind of like, have this like a non-dual or uh, like an emptiness kind of
Yeah.
meditation aspect to it. But in this one it was like more of the like meta meditation, which is like trying to, like, consciously trying to feel the what others feel, and
Yeah.
wishing them well, and then connecting with that feeling
Yeah.
of
And I
like
used
wanting
this,
others to feel all right.
right.
And when you feel that, then it heals yourself as well.
Right. I used a stone person, so a sculpture on purpose in this piece for that idea of like that generation of empathy, the wanting to move towards
Mm,
that ability, that it's a developed ability to empathize with other people, and opening yourself up to that. So that's why I chose the imagery of the sculpture,
mm.
stone sculpture,
Yeah, it's really
crying
cool.
in the background. Yeah. Yeah. Take Me Home is a favorite of mine too. I really like this piece.
Mm,
It's super fun. And then it's very similar to the Atomic Nature, or the Atomic Shuffle that I was talking about before.
mm,
So, you had said like finding our true, that when we had talked about it, like finding our true nature, letting go of this world, nothing's permanent. We're part of the universe that's unfolding. Those were some of the notes I had,
mm,
and surrendering ourselves to what is happening and being at peace with it. So I have lots of imagery in this piece that obviously represent an ending of life, but then a creation of new life. I do have like the death of the planetary nebula in the background. So that idea of like the death of a star, like the
mm,
ending of something, the ending of a cycle. And then the creation of new life is really in the decomposers and the organisms, the plants that are coming out of the human being that is lying there,
mm.
passed away. So this was just, I don't know, this was a really fun piece to make as well.
Yeah, I also really love it, and it took me a while to first notice that there's a person in the
Oh, really?
yeah.
Okay.
I didn't realize it at first. I just thought that it was part of
The landscape.
the what do you call it, where where the mushrooms grow, like
Oh, okay.
something.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that even more. All right.
It was just something like out of which the mushrooms are growing. And then
Yeah.
when Abby did the animation, and then there's the
Yeah.
person without the mushrooms, then all
Yeah.
of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, that's a person right there.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
great. I love that so much.
Yeah, then it all kind of like made sense for me even more. Like all the puzzle pieces kind of like fit.
The
I was like, oh,
story.
okay, okay, like now I get
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm glad the animation clarified it. That's great.
Yeah, I feel like this image like brings like a nice closure to the whole
Yeah.
theme of the album, because it starts like from the universe and landing on the planet Earth, and then seeing all of like what's going on here. Like, oh, there's all these like organisms, and then there's this like weird ape called Homo sapiens, which is like doing all
Yeah.
these things and like have all these problems, and but they have like their own destiny and like journey and spiritual awakening, and all of that happens. And then we're kind of like, after the album is done, then we're kind of like leaving Earth, like back to the
Right.
universe. So
Yeah.
that was like
Yeah,
perfect.
and it's like no matter all of these distractions with technology or money, et cetera, like we're all going to end in the same place anyway. We're all going to get recycled back into this system anyway that we, like as we talked about before, feel like we're separate from. But
Mhm.
in reality, we're not separate from.
Yeah,
So,
it's like
yeah.
embracing that impermanence of the
Yeah.
universe, and and finding strength from it, and not like um, clinging on to the physical world too much,
Yeah.
uh, even though it's important, and like all of the album like discusses all these things about the physical world and all of that, but then in the end, like the ultimate kind of realization is the um, connecting with the universe itself,
Yeah.
like the impermanence and the ever shifting nature of it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yep. And this yeah, continuity, the continuation of what the matter that makes us up, just
yeah,
moving forward. Yeah.
yeah, and the death of the star, like the nebula in the background, is also like where the stardust comes from, right? So that
Yeah.
like spreads around the atoms in the galaxy, and where out of which new planets and life forms and things can emerge from.
Right, right. So yeah, and like it being a planetary nebula as opposed to like a stellar nebula was important for me. Like I
Mm,
wanted it to represent that like dying gasp of a star and potentially a solar system that had life in it.
mm,
So like we don't know obviously, but you know, every planetary nebula was once probably a medium-sized star like our sun.
mm,
So and then that is also the fate of our sun. So
mm,
yeah. So it's not just even talking about our own lives, but talking about like the cycling of our entire solar system, you know, in let's
mm,
say 4 billion years from now.
mm.
Yeah. I just wanted to depress everyone at the end, you know, that was important.
Just remind everybody that we're all gonna die. That's,
Right. When I
that's
was
my,
teaching, I always tried to really instill a sense of existential dread in my teenage students. You know,
mm.
I'm like, have a good day.
Mm.
It's
But
important.
I think that's actually really cool,
Yeah.
because the existential dread is in the beginning of the album as well, you know. But
Yeah.
then in the end, you can also find, because the existential dread is also like maybe comes from the fact that we're gonna die. So we're like trying to find like meaning of everything, like because we're
Yeah.
here such a short amount of time, and the doom is inevitable.
Right. And
So
how do we deal with that? Like some people deal with that through like organized religion, and like some people
mm,
deal with that through this idea of atomic reincarnation, you know,
mm.
as being, like I said before, another form of spirituality.
But I feel like in the Take Me Home piece, it's kind of like this surrendering to it,
Yeah.
because then you don't have to fight it, because you can't escape it, the fact. so you might as well surrender, and you can actually find a tremendous relief out of that as
Yeah,
well.
and peace in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the
Excellent.
universe will keep on going, and we're all part of the same universe. So
Right.
in that
And we
sense,
will, and
our
yeah,
atoms
and
will
whether
never die.
our consciousness continues, like the matter that makes us up continues in different
Yeah.
forms. It's not the end of us.
Mm,
It is the end of us as we think of us, but it's not the
mm,
end of everything
hmm.
that we're a part of, or the atoms that make us up are a part of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
So
want to talk about the cover piece?
I want to talk about the cover because I had this
Okay.
impossible task for you to put all the art pieces
I was
on the
definitely
same.
overwhelmed by this piece. I was like the most nervous when I made it.
Mm,
And yeah, it was really fun once I got into it and like had the aesthetic idea of what I wanted to do and you gave me feedback. Like it was definitely a lot of fun to put it together and to just all the little Easter eggs that I got to put in it from the different
mm.
pieces, was just very, very fun to make.
Yeah, it was cool to see like all the elements, um, like
Yeah.
what element is out of what song.
Yeah, you got me
It's-
with the Viking ship. I was like, where am I going to find a Viking ship that works? Like, it was an easy task, but I
Mm,
was so excited when I found this Viking ship. I'm like, I did it.
mm,
I found it. But yeah. Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was just really fun to make this piece. It just felt like a swirling whirl of like all the different, songs in your album.
mm. Yeah, and I think it's like it was really cool because it was also so different, like
Yeah.
just visually so different um, from the individual art pieces from the individual songs that it was cool to see that the album art is distinct from uh, all of the other art pieces.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and you had a big part of this, like the inspiration for what this piece looked like. You had a really clear idea in your head of what you wanted this to look
mm,
like. And so that was very helpful for me in making it. And so I just kind of got to play,
mm.
with this one, which was great.
Was it hard to like find like to just put all the aspects or like put all the different elements out of the different artworks? Like how did you figure out
What to use?
how to make it work? Yeah.
I think it's always hard to start a piece, and then once I get an idea, and because you had given me such a clear vision of what you wanted for this piece, it was easier for me. I did the textures that I used in the background are actually, I wanted it to feel melodic, because
Mm,
it is an album cover for a song. So you've got like, they're not, it's not music, but it like kind of has that feeling of music. And also there's
mm.
neurons. So in the backward pattern in that background, you can see neurons kind of going through it and that
Oh, cool!
idea.
I didn't even realize.
Yeah, so that thinking about, there's just so much that you're trying to say in this album, and there's so much that I was trying to say in the pieces that I wanted to kind of give that cerebral feel to this cover piece. And then once I got, like I said, once I got started, because you had such a clear vision, it was really fun to figure out like what imagery I wanted to use from each piece and where I wanted it to go. So I really enjoyed like picking each one of them apart and kind of putting them together like a puzzle here.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really blown away when I saw that
Oh, great.
the
I'm
cover
glad.
the first time. It like just felt right.
And it also like the fish swimming around it. Like I wanted it also to have that like surreal feel to it,
Mm.
and just to really bring together like the entirety of what you're trying to say in this album in general.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was super fun to work on this piece. I think I might want to say it was the last, it had to have been the last one I did, right? Because there's imagery from each separate section in
Yeah,
it. So, yeah.
yeah, and also like it was like it would have been impossible to make that image without diving so deeply into every
Yeah.
individual song. Yeah,
And,
like
and yeah, and having an idea of what I was trying to convey in all of those songs and
yeah,
yeah, or not
I
songs.
think like it you can see like all the depth in the cover art, like because
Yeah.
you don't just like make a cover art like that from scratch, like out of nowhere, just
Right.
like because it has so much intricate like details and
Great. Yeah,
stuff in it.
it absolutely needed to be the last piece that I
Yeah,
made.
so I think it was like a really good exercise, kind of like to uh, do all the individual songs first, and then when you make the final album art, it kind of it's gonna have that depth in it
Yeah.
because it has like the whole journey like
Yeah.
baked into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely the end of the journey. So it was really exciting and fun and just kind of playful
Mm.
to put the pieces together. So yeah,
Yeah, and I just want to say like it was such a pleasure working with you,
absolutely.
and
Same working with
and
you.
Abby with the
Yeah.
animations, and I feel like everything just uh, like flowed really nicely, and
Absolutely. Yeah. It was just
just
such a pleasure to work with you and to listen to the album and to, kind of put create your vision of what you wanted it to be, this idea of this immersive experience for your audience.
mm,
Um, I really liked. You talked about when we first talked, you talked about like a book, or
mhm,
like old albums. It just reminded me of when I used to go to the store and buy albums, and it was so exciting. And you would go and open it up and listen, look at the lyrics and look at the art and listen to the songs. And like you very rarely get to do that anymore.
mm.
Um, and so this is really an exciting project to work on from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I feel like the it all just kind of like flowed very naturally. Where um, I was thinking about like, okay, I need to find the artist for this album, but for some reason, like your work always like stood out for me.
Yeah.
Like, and I didn't really have any other even alternatives. Like you were the only
Oh, great.
artist I
Thank you.
contacted, and and you were like, oh yeah, let's do it. And I actually have like 3 months off in the summer anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it was
it kind
perfect
of just
timing.
worked out perfectly. And in our both of our like schedules, like the deadline where we needed the art to be finished, and also like your schedule, just lined everything lined up perfectly,
Yeah, it was
and
like, yeah.
like everything was like on time and exactly like how I envisioned it. So it was really nice to see like that sometimes things just work out almost like magically.
Yeah, yeah, it was really, yeah, I feel like it was very serendipitous that everything worked out the way that it did.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked so easily together. And yeah, I was really excited to be part of this. And it's nice when like so much, sometimes I'll work on commissions where I am always, like I said, excited to work with different people, but it's very far away from my own interpretation of the world. So I'll work on something and I'm excited about the visuals of the piece, but the meaning behind the piece I'm less excited about.
Mm.
Whereas with this, from the first moment that we talked, and like I said, I made the We Are the Moon, and it was just such like a reflection of the way that I think about the world. And so it was really exciting for me to be able to tell this story with you.
Mm.
Yeah, and with the album. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah. Do you mind if I say my Instagram handle? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so my Instagram, if anyone's interested in seeing more of my pieces, is at forms_most_beautiful. Sorry about the underscores.
Hmm.
And then my website is www.formsmostbeautiful.com.
Cool. I will also tag you in the description, of course,
Okay, that would be
so
awesome. Thank you
people
so
will
much.
find you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been fun. I'm so glad we got to connect.